Hello everyone, my name is Stepanyan, and I'm going to talk to you about OWASP Nettacker project. First of all, briefly about me. As I said, my name is Stepanyan. I'm one of OWASP London Chapter Leaders. I'm an ex-developer. I come from software development background. I am an application security consultant in financial services in the City of London, and I am a defender. So why am I presenting a talk about a tool which consists of words network and attacker? A quick background. Back in December 2018, Dr. Greg Frakos and I were asked to demo OWASP Nettacker at Black Hat Europe 2018, as Nettacker project leaders could not get to London in time. So Greg and we had to learn Nettacker overnight to be able to demo it at Black Hat Arsenal. Then this happened. As you can see, we had huge crowds of penetration testers and security researchers gathering around our stand watching the live demo of this tool. Everybody loved the tool, and we liked it as well, and we liked it so much that we decided to present it the following year in 2019. And then the same thing happened at Black Hat Europe 2019. Even bigger crowd of people gathered to watch the demo of this tool. So what is OWASP Nettacker and why is it so popular? Just like all OWASP projects, OWASP Nettacker is an open source tool, and it is an open source software tool which assists with penetration testing by automating information gathering and vulnerability scanning tasks. The tool is written in Python and it can be run on Windows, Linux, or Mac OS, and it is compatible with both Python 2 and Python 3. Another important thing to mention about Nettacker is that it is a project under Google Summer of Code. If you don't know what Google Summer of Code is, it is an initiative by Google which has been run since, I think, 2005, where Google pays students to work on an open source project during the summer break. And we're very happy to report that Nettacker was accepted as Google Summer of Code project. So what is OWASP Nettacker? I'd like you to think about it as Swiss Army knife. And just like a Swiss Army knife, it's a tool consisting of many tools. Not necessarily compatible with each other, but can they be all used together? Good question. So just like a Swiss Army knife, OWASP Nettacker is a collection of tools or modules, so it has modular structure. The modules are all written in Python, and it's relatively easy to create your own modules should you want to. It is quite fast compared with some other tools because it's using Python's multi-threading. It has customizable profiles, which are bundles of modules focused on specific tasks. And most importantly, it's automatable, so you can automate and run the tool from the command line. So OWASP Nettacker is a relatively young project, what we call an OWASP incubator project. So it is not officially released yet. It is not even in beta. The current version is 0.0.1. Yet it is an awesome tool. Why? It already has a command line interface, web UI, an API, report generator, multi-ego transforms, and it has over 62 modules. First of all, you can find OWASP Nettacker on owasp.org website, on OWASP project page. Here's the URL on the screen. All the documentation that you need to install Nettacker and how to use it is actually available on GitHub under Wiki. So when you navigate to the GitHub repository for the project, please make sure you click on the Wiki to get access to the documentation. Installing Nettacker is relatively simple and very, very quick. All you need to do to install it from GitHub, you just do a git clone from GitHub, then you run pip install of all the dependencies, all the requirements, and then you can install the tool using the Python setup.py install command. Before we move any further, I would like to warn everyone about responsible use of offensive security tools. You shall not misuse this tool nor any other security tool for unauthorized access, and I would like to remind you that performing security scans without permission from the owner of the computer system is illegal. So first of all, Nettacker has multiple modules, as we know, and we can classify Nettacker modules into three different types. Scan modules, for example, port scan, vuln modules, or vulnerability modules. So these are the modules which are looking for a specific vulnerability. An example of that would be an Apache Struts vulnerability. And the third type of module is brute module, or brute forcing module. Again, an example of such module would be an SSH brute. So here is the list of all the Nettacker scan modules at the moment. There are 21 scan modules. Here I'm showing on the screen all sorted in alphabetical order to make it easier for you to understand what they are. Of course, I'm not going to read out all of them, but I would like to bring your attention to some of them. For example, CMS detection scan module will help you to find content management systems. ICMP scan will help you to ping your whole network and find hosts which are responding to ICMP pings. Port scan is probably one of the most popular module, allows you, of course, to perform port scans. Subdomain scan is another popular one, allows you to find all the subdomains or the particular domain. And there are several modules around WordPress, like WordPress version scans, plugin scan, theme scan, user scan, and several others. Then here is the list of Nettacker vulnerability scanning modules. There are 30 vulnerability scanning modules at Nettacker at the moment. Again, quite a lot of them. I'm not going to read out on this slide. They're all presented in alphabetical order. I only want to bring your attention to some interesting ones. For example, a recent addition was the Citrix CVE vulnerability scanning module. This is about Citrix vulnerability from December 2019, which affected quite a lot of organizations. Another interesting vulnerability scanning modules are server version vuln, which allows you to find servers which leak their banners and server version headers. Also SSL certificate expired vuln, which basically helps you find servers with an expired SSL certificate. And Nettacker brute force modules, or brute modules, we currently have 8 brute force modules available for FTP, HTTP basic auth, HTTP form, HTTP NTLM brute forcing, SMTP, SSH, Telnet, and WordPress XML RPC brute forcing. So Nettacker originally was designed to be an IoT scanner. And the idea was that you can use it to scan your network for Internet of Things devices, or you can scan your IoT device for open ports, and you can scan it for default credentials. So IoT scan was the original name of OWASP Nettacker. So as you can guess, port scanning is probably one of the main modules of Nettacker. And the port scanner inside Nettacker is easy to use and fast, faster compared with Nmap. And I know a lot of people who use Nmap are usually quite frustrated with the fact that this tool is not easy to use, and Nmap actually takes some time to get used to and to understand how it works. Nettacker's port scan module is very simple, and essentially all that you need to do to scan it is either use it without any parameters or use it with a -G command line switch, where you can list the specific ports you want to scan. And because this Nettacker uses Python multi-threading, you can add -T and -M command line options to increase the number of threads to make the port scanning process much faster. So before I move on to actually show the demo of Nettacker, I need to understand how to run Nettacker first of all. So to run Nettacker, you need to specify 2 command switches. There's a minimum of 2 things you need to define when you run it. So you have to define the target, and you have to define the module. So the target is usually defined with a -I switch, and the target can be a single IP address, or for example the whole network or IP range, and the -M where you define the name of the module that you would like to use on this specific target. So targets can be not just an IP address or an IP range. You can define, for example, a starting IP or and ending IP. It can also be a CIDR range like this. You can also define a domain name, and you can also define a specific URL as a target. And specific URL, you need to provide the full URL with a protocol. So Nettacker will support both HTTP and HTTPS URLs. So these are all the various targets that Nettacker can scan in one go. You can also you can also create a list of all the targets you want Nettacker to run against in a file, in a text file, and in this case you will run Nettacker with a command line switch-l. Chaining modules. So this is the coolest feature of Nettacker, where it actually allows you to use several Swiss Army knife tools at once. Okay, I'm going to switch to my Kali Linux and log in. Here I already have Nettacker installed, so I'm not going to show you how to install Nettacker. But this is how you can run Nettacker. So because I'm already in Nettacker folder, I can just run it by typing python nettacker.py. And if I run it with no other parameters, as you can see, it spits out its usage help, and you can see it's quite a lot of information which is presented to you, as you need to read and understand. And so when running Nettacker, you need to define two things, as you remember. We need to define the target and we need to define the module. So here I'm going to demonstrate to you how to run Nettacker for performing a port scan. So I'm going to define my target in -i switch, and my target in this case is going to be a single IP address, 192.168.132.192.192, and -m, or the module that I'm going to use on this target, is going to be port scan. Port_scan, and then I run Nettacker. As you can see, now it's running. When it starts, let me just quickly scroll up so you can see how quickly it performed the port scan. When Nettacker scans, first of all it checks if you're in the latest version, tells you how many modules are loaded. My current version has 64 modules. It also then tells you which target it's about to scan, and as you can see, it's very quickly discovered all the open ports on my target, and then it displayed the findings here in a text table. And you can also see that at the bottom of the screen, Nettacker also told us that the report was saved in this file. The next thing I'm going to talk about is another cool feature of Nettacker, which is chaining modules. So you can actually pull more than one tool out of your Swiss Army knife, and you can run several modules on your target. And the way you do it is that you list the modules that you would like to use, separated by a comma. So for example, in this example, if we want to run a port scan and phpMyAdmin scan on this IP address, I'll just list port scan and then comma and then PMA scan. Similarly, for example, if I would like to run two modules on OWASP.org domain, if I want to do a subdomain scan and a server version vulnerability scan, I can just separate them by a comma. So let me do a demonstration of the module chaining now. So I'm going to run Nettacker. Then I am going to define the target. So in this case, I'm going to show you how to chain port scan with the server version vuln. So I'm going to select OWASP.org domain as a target this time. And as modules, I'm going to define a subdomain scan. And then I'm going to add a comma, and I'm going to add a port scan. And because the port scan will take quite a while to complete, I'm going to only define the port scan on the ports 80 and on the port 443. Okay, so let's double check everything. So we have Nettacker, which runs on OWASP.org to do subdomain scan and also to perform a port scan on these ports. So if I want to run the port scan on all the subdomains as well, I will need to add a -s parameter. So let's run this and see what happens. So again, we can see Nettacker starts, and as you can see now, it discovers the subdomain of OWASP.org and submits them into the engine for scanning. And you can see already some of the subdomains respond back with an open port. So you can see, for example, OCMS has ports 80 and 443 open, and then you can see all the other subdomains responding as well. You can see, obviously, because now I'm using 2 modules, it will take a while to complete, but you can see the process, and you can see how every single discovered subdomain is being scanned. So when this process completes, we will get the similar result in a text format. So let's just wait for it to complete. As you can see, again, it dives into every single discovered subdomain and attempts to scan it for port 80 or port 443. Okay, so here is the scan, which is now complete, and as you can see, we used 2 methods. We used port scan and we used the subdomain scan. You can see that all the results are now in this table. So this is not it. We can add one more module. We can add as many as we want. So I'm now going to add a server version vuln as well. Again, I'm going to add a server version vuln and run this again. Yeah, so here in this example, OWASP Nettacker is going to run a subdomain scan on OWASP.org. Then for every single discovered subdomain, it is now going to try to discover what is the type of the server used in the server banner. Then it is going to try to do a port scan and see if port 80 and port 443 is open. You can see it's doing it recursively for every single subdomain of OWASP.org. And here is the result in a text file. But what use is a result in a text file? Well, now let's have a look at the HTML report. We can see here that the report was saved in this HTML file. So let me copy paste this file and open it with Firefox. Copy and open it with Firefox browser. Okay, and here we're going to see one of the coolest features of OWASP Nettacker penetration testing graphs. And here you can see how the attack was started. You can see all the subdomains of OWASP.org which were discovered by Nettacker, and then you can see the further scans that were done on each subdomain. So you can see that there was a port scan performed and there was a server version vulnerability performed, and you can see these are the open ports and these are the server banners of each subdomain. And at the bottom of the report we can see all the results of the scan displayed in the tabular format. Let's compare OWASP Nettacker with some other scanners so you can understand the difference. So let's have a look at the popular scanners such as Burp Suite or OWASP Zap. So what these scanners do, they scan one website for many web application vulnerabilities. And these are whatever vulnerabilities the scanner is able to find on that one website. And usually these scanners would crawl one website to discover all the URLs, all the parameters, and it tries to detect as many vulnerabilities as possible, usually on one website. So the difference with OWASP Nettacker is that it scans one or many and that can be hundreds of thousands of IP addresses, networks, or subdomains or websites for open ports with one or more specific vulnerabilities, and you listed by the user. As you can see, we list which specific vulnerabilities we're looking for, but the actual targets can be one device, can be one IP address or one website, but it could be hundreds of thousands, and that is the greatest advantage of OWASP Nettacker. So how OWASP Nettacker can be useful in your enterprise network? Here's an old tweet about OWASP A0 from Jeremiah Grossman. So Jeremiah suggested that the OWASP Top 10 2017 to include an A0 or asset inventory. And Jeremiah is saying, these days the biggest AppSec risk are websites that you don't know that you own. And Nettacker actually solves this problem, because if we look at some of the Nettacker use cases in the enterprise, so you can use it for asset discovery. You can discover your subdomains, your web service, your applications. You can scan your network for open ports, and you can scan it internally, or you can scan it from outside. Externally, you can scan your network for any new hosts. You can scan your network for default credentials. So for example, how many devices on your network have default admin credentials enabled? OWASP Nettacker allows you to discover it very quickly. OWASP Nettacker allows you to discover it quite easily. You can also monitor subdomains and open ports on them. You can monitor expired SSL certificates in your IP ranges, and you can find subdomains hosting vulnerable versions of WordPress, Drupal, and Joomla CMS. So these are just a few examples of how you can use Nettacker in your corporate network. Just like all OWASP projects, we welcome all contributions. If you know Python and you would like to enhance and improve OWASP Nettacker, please familiarize yourself with Developer Wiki, which is located at this URL. So please read and follow the contributor guidelines before submitting any pull request. And also one last thing before I finish, that OWASP Nettacker tool also has a logo. So this little radar circle is OWASP Nettacker logo. So next time you see it, you'll be able to recognize the tool. So this is it from me. So thank you very much for listening. And if you've got any questions about the tool, you can contact me email sam.stepanyan@owasp.org, or you can also contact me on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is